Staliśmy przy Ukrainie cały czas, od pierwszego dnia.
We've always stood by Ukraine from day one. I was in Kiev the day before the Russian invasion. I literally left the city a few hours before the first Russian missiles hit Kiev and other cities. I embraced President Zelensky for the last time before the Russian invasion and promised him I would support Ukraine until the Russians were driven out. And I continue this support. Poland as a nation supports and will support the country, and that goes for all Polish politicians. This isn't just a question of regional security, but of global security in my view. It's not just about Poland's security, but about fundamental human decency. If someone's invaded by another country, by a superpower, it deserves our support, because every nation has the right to live as an independent sovereign country, especially having been one already. So when that country is invaded, the most basic human decency is to support those defending themselves. That's why we stand by Ukraine, and it's why I relentlessly call on support for Ukraine wherever I go, Davos included. Russian advantages over Ukraine are obvious: territory, population, military might. But the heroism shown by the Ukrainians commands respect. We're supporting them not only by hosting refugees within our borders from the start of the war, but we also send military aid. We were the first to send them 100 tanks. In total, we've sent them more than 300, as well as more than a dozen or so of the newest Leopard tanks we had in our arsenal. We've also sent long-distance AHS Crab howitzers, so the Ukrainians could repel Russian attacks, and we hope that Ukraine will continue to receive support until it can finally oust the Russians from its occupied territories.
And yet, huge support from Poland, a lot of support from other Western allies, and yet Russia seems implacable to a certain degree in certain parts of the country. They still control 20% of the country. I spoke to Mr. Yermak from the President's office in Ukraine a couple of days ago. He said there will be no negotiations with Mr. Putin. But in order for this war not to last another 2 years or another 10 years, if we consider the start was when the invasion of Crimea happened, surely the Ukrainians need to start speaking to the Russians. At the moment, they won't speak to them.
Trudno się dziwić, że przedstawiciele władz Ukrainy nie chcą dzisiaj rozmawiać.
It's hardly surprising the Ukrainian authorities won't speak to Vladimir Putin, because they made it clear from the start, which I, as Polish president, completely understand. The Russians have to leave illegally occupied regions of Ukraine. This is land they're occupying. They invaded, unprovoked, for no reason, simply to gain new territory and impose their rule over Ukrainians. They attacked an independent sovereign nation, so I'm not surprised Volodymyr Zelensky and his team say clearly that the end of the war will come when they drive out the Russians from all their occupied territories. For me, this is obvious. Today, when I hear that many countries that have long-range missiles in their arsenals that can reach enemy targets hundreds of kilometres away, I thank them for sending this support to Ukraine. So I thank the UK, France and Germany, because their support is paramount to making the Russians understand that this war won't end with their great victory. This war has to end fairly. That means when Ukraine is successful in defending itself.